So a bottle of CoQ10 that I was paying about $10 or $15 for in the 80s, all of a sudden went up to $100. And I was like, looking at my rep, Andy, and I was like, dude, what's going on? And he goes, pharmaceutical companies started snapping up all of the CoQ10 because they know that they block the process here and they're supplementing it here down the line so that we're not killing people. And that's still one of the tricks they do today. So if we look at the new food pyramid that's coming out, and you look at the bottom, nuts, seeds, avocados, coconut, eggs, cheese, and all the different fish, chicken, different proteins and fats. Why do you think those are now the new foundation? And this is where you got to start to wrap your head around things. Why do you think those are the foundation? A, they're simple. B, they contain lots of fats. Why do you need fats?
Because that's what your brain is.
Brain is 60% fat. Nervous system is wrapped in fat. So you have to have good fats, not trans fats, good fats. So you have to have fats from avocado. You have to have fats from nuts. Vegans and vegetarians can get their fats from there very definitely. Where you guys have problems is getting the amino acids. You think they come from the whole grains, but the whole grains have the problem of the phytates and the lectins in them, and it blocks a lot of the good thing in nutrition. And let's take a step back and really look at a culture that lives on a grain. Orientals have lived on grains forever, and it's a staple of their diet. But what's the staple? White rice. Why do they use white rice? Because somewhere down the line, way down here, they knew that if they ate the whole grain, they got ill. And so they process everything out. And they use it for the carbohydrate content.
So is white rice better than brown rice?
Depends on how you look at it, but technically, yes, white rice is. It's easier on the system than brown rice. Now remember, wild rice, if I remember right, wild rice is not actually rice. It's a ancient grain, and that seems to be a little easier on our system. I don't know why yet. I'm sure it'll come up in the reading somewhere. The next level is we look at vegetables. And this is where Dr. Gundry's work makes a lot of sense to me. And Dr. Gundry's work actually takes into account Ansel Keys. How many people have heard that name before? Ansel Keys. So Ansel Keys was a scientist in the 50s when Truman had his heart attack. And he was a dietitian, nutritionist. I think he was a PhD, MD, blah, blah, blah. Super smart guy. And he started to do his studies, and he said saturated fats cause heart disease. We now know saturated fats in the presence of lots of sugar, which we have, that oxidizes the fats and causes an inflammatory process in us. But, so he said, hey, get rid of the saturated fat, and that started the whole low-fat craze in the United States. And when they take fat out, what do they replace fat with?
Sugar.
Yep. Why? Tastes good. So they took out the fat that we needed for our brain, for our nervous system, for our hormones. So your thyroid stimulating hormone, your estrogen, your testosterone. Believe it or not, you and I have the same amount of estrogen in our bodies. I have 10 times the amount of testosterone that you have. So why is it when guys get exposed to phytoestrogens, you start to get man boobs? We start to mimic females because our estrogen content goes up and we no longer have that same ratio of testosterone to estrogen. But Dr. Gundry's work comes back here, and they basically cook, pressure cook, steam, or somehow prepare the vegetables. Why?
Help you digest them better.
And it destroys the phytates and the lectins. So the thing that's in those that causes gut irritation in us, here's a challenge. Go eat 2 or 3 pounds of salad. You can't do it. And it's not the fiber, because I can consume that same amount of fiber in a drink or a powder or something, and it's okay. It's the phytates and the lectins that are in those things that cause issues. And they're seeing where that's related to rheumatoid arthritis and things of that nature. So then what's last is berries and fruits. What we need out of the berries and fruits are the polyphenols. And so Dr. Gundry studied Dr. Keyes. He liked Dr. Keyes. He said Dr. Keyes was a highly intelligent man, and he goes, if you look in the world of nutrition, and I'm one that always says this, the proof is in the pudding. Don't tell me, show me. If you're going to tell me how to live to be 100 years, at least lived 100 years. Well, there are only 2 people in the nutrition world that have lived to be 100 years. One is Ansel Keys, who, I will be very truthful, until I read Dr. Gundry's last book, I pretty much thought he was a D-bag. Because I was like, he killed so many people by bringing on this low-fat, high-carbohydrate craze that has spun into this monster that we have in the United States known as the convenience food industry. And he took away all the fats that make our hormones, and now you have diabetes, and you have obesity, and you have all of these things, and it really stems from that. But how old did Ansel Keys live to be? 102. And he is the vegetarian. He did the 7-city study, which was actually, I believe, 21 studies. He cherry-picked his data, to prove his point. But taking that out of the equation, when he retired to Sardinia, Italy. Dr. Gundry interviewed his housekeeper. The housekeeper, and he were talking, and they go, well, what's his diet, what's he going, blah, 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 going through everything, and he walked his talk. One thing he did not tell everybody that he did was he consumed about 1 liter of olive oil a week. That's about 150 grams of monounsaturated fat a day. Now that is a plant-based fat. And so I tend to, when I eat, and yeah, I want to live to be 100, 120. And I would love to play with my great-great-grandchildren. And if you look at the Sardinians who are living to be centurions and super centurions, that's over 110 years old. They are not staying in the house. And Sardinia, Italy is not flat. It's coastal. The gardens aren't on the coast. They're in the hills. These guys are getting up every day, going outside, climbing a mountain, and gardening and doing their thing and coming down and taking care of great-great-grandchildren. Great-great-great-grandchildren. So they are active, contributing people. So there's a book called The Blue Zones. That's where a lot of the longevity work is off of. And the Blue Zone studies all of these cultures. And in all of those cultures, pretty much all of them were sea-based. They ate lots of fish, fatty fish. They had a diverse polyphenolic diet. So they consumed lots of different plants and had lots of good fats and stuff like that. So they got lots of phytates, lots of lectins. Believe it or not, they don't consume as many calories as we consume. So I'm not a big calorie fan, but if you look at these people, they're eating very nutrient-dense diets, but in nutrient density, you don't have all the calories. So their caloric intake is a lot less than ours. And they actually show with caloric restriction that in caloric restriction, you actually start to secrete enzymes which slow down the metabolism. But it doesn't slow down your ability to do things. And that's one thing that was very interesting in Dr. Gundry's work. He said, you know, when you have people whose hearts are beating at 38 beats a minute, resting, that's a resting heart rate, you're not burning through things. You're not creating as much reactive species. You're not doing these things. So you're not aging as fast. And so it might not be a bad thing to have a little slower metabolism and not burn through the calories and have a higher quality of calorie. So, okay, we still have some time to burn. So let's talk about fats, healthy fats. You have to have these for so many different things in your body, it's not even funny. From structures like nerves and brain and synapses to hormone, your testosterone, thyroid stimulating hormone, T3, T4, all of it, estrogen, luteinizing hormone, whatever. You have to have these things. The problem is in the United States, we give you trans fats. Trans fats are fake fats. So we're going to take another little step back and let's look at all of evolution. How long has the human species been around? Quite a long time, but if you look at the history of the world, if you say the timeline for the history of the world is right here, we're about right here. Now, if we take this and expand it, for so long, we were hunter-gatherers. So we moved around, we were nomadic. And it wasn't until we started to have agriculture that we became sedentary. And then we also started to have diseases. Diseases of modernity. I have a hard time with that word. And so when we start to see this, we start to also see convenience foods, fast foods, processed foods, and these things coming into play. And they're made of things our bodies haven't seen. And I don't know if you noticed, but we don't change a whole lot. If you look at a picture of us, and you look at Ewald and Otto, those guys are, I forget how old that picture is. Let's just say it's at least 50 or 60 years old because it's black and white. They don't look a whole lot different than I look. We don't change fast. We don't evolve fast. Much like when we went through the sleep seminar and we talked about the evolution of sleep. Think of a sleeping human. How vulnerable is a sleeping human? Very. So don't you think we would have been selectively eliminated for the people who didn't have to sleep or slept the least amount? And we've pretty much been fine-tuned to about all that we can have and need. Because if you go any less, we start to have mental problems. If you look at people, if you want to make somebody go, I'll refer back to the sleep seminar. If you take somebody that is sleep adapted, and you give them just 6.5 hours of sleep, and you have them do a task, you set a baseline, make them sleep 6.5 hours, have them do the same task the next day, they will perform as if they had consumed enough alcohol to have a 0.05 alcohol content. And that includes driving, that includes anything. That's how bad. Drowsy drivers kill more people and cause more accidents and cause more money than drunk drivers. So, does fat make you fat?
No.
No. Your body will use and process that fat. You give it good fats, and don't give it sugar. Don't give it extra sugar. White sugar is more addictive than cocaine. Go look it up. Rats will go to white sugar over cocaine to the tune of 95%. And we are animals. We like to think that we are higher functioning than animals. And when our prefrontal cortex is properly nutritioned or properly hydrated, properly fed, properly slept, properly everything, you can outthink that. That's your willpower. You start to take that away, there goes the willpower. And where are you going to go? You're going to default to whatever the gut wants, and this is a very primitive thing, and it has, don't be fooled, it has direct access to the brain via the enteric nervous system, via the vagal nerve, via the enteric nervous system, and it wants, or it will crave, simple sugars. Now the problem is simple sugars digest in the top third, and they don't feed the rest of the bacteria. So how many people have, you don't have to raise your hand, but if you eat stuff and you eat certain things, and when you eat these things and you do this, you get bloated, you get gassy, and these things happen to you, you probably have what is called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, because the bacteria have migrated out of the large intestine and they're trying to get to the food because we don't feed them enough fiber. So fat doesn't make you fat. It actually makes your mind strong. It makes your nervous system strong. It helps you resist cravings. It's very satiating. It's good stuff. It helps the blood vessels. It prevents cardiovascular disease. You can look at the Eskimos, the Greenland Eskimos, and they have I think their diet is 80 or 90% fat, whale blubber essentially. And because that's what they've existed on for centuries, their biome is adjusted to this. They have good teeth. They are strong and healthy. They're not obese. Guess what they don't get? Sugar. They don't get processed food. So I don't care if it's paleo, vegan, vegetarian, healthy, omega-3 burgers. That's a highly processed piece of meat, if you can even call it meat. I would just roll it back to the cow, and did this cow graze on grass, and hopefully it wasn't sprayed and whatever else, depends on how geeky you want to get. If this was a pastured animal and it ate grass, it's going to have a good omega-3 content. Your body's going to do stuff with it, and you can have it. It's not going to hurt you as long as you're pretty healthy. Now, if you're like me and you have the APOE3 and 4 genetics and you eat a lot of this and you happen to get into sugar or other stuff, then yeah, I take saturated fats and I get Alzheimer's. People with the APOE3 and 4 genetics have to be very careful of the fats that they get because it can cause problems. So it doesn't hurt to do a 23andMe and then run your genetics through what is called DNA supplementation, so you know where that's at. You can get 23andMe on the internet. We do DNA supplementation at the clinic. I'll just tell you, it's $100 fee.